Okay. So, what has been your family's greatest blessing?
Well, I think the gospel of Jesus Christ has been, and that my parents are born, that I was born under the covenant, and always had the gospel in my life. But the most material thing that was the greatest blessing in our family was that our family moved to Venezuela with all of our children. The youngest, Kyle, was 3 years of age, and the oldest boys were 13 or 14 and 15, I think, Ron and Brant. And that experience of moving away when they were in junior high, the older boys, had a profound effect upon them, because they were in Catholic schools in Venezuela, and the girls would take Book of Mormons and try to pass them out, but the nuns didn't like that.
I bet.
And but they were finally excused from the catechisms when the children were going to confirmation, because the nuns decided they were not going to join the church. But they always told them, "Now, if you girls will just join our church, we'll have a great big party for you." And the girls just kind of smiled and said, "No, thank you." And Julie and Cherie were in a, let's see, it was a small school that was kind of like Edith Bowen here, that was kind of a university school for teachers.
Okay.
And they were the only little blondes in the whole school. And so they really stood out, because all the other little girls had dark hair. And I taught an English class for their classes at Edith, do you remember the name of the school?
Apula.
Apula is where Julie and Cherie went to school. And so I was out there once a week, and we got acquainted with a lot of the teachers there and the different people. And we went to some of the marriages where they had bands, and it was very different than our very solemn temple marriages. But that was an eye-opener, I think, to our children. And their friends were an eye-opener to them, too, because the boys and Margie went around with a group of friends from their schools who were a little bit rough on, I mean, they didn't believe a lot of things that we did. And I asked Brian one time, I said, "Brian, were you ever tempted to try drugs?" And he said, "Nope, I saw what it did to my friends in Venezuela." And I think the same for Ron and Brant.
Yeah.
Their friends tried a lot of things that the boys didn't do. But there were enough LDS kids there that they did have friends that weren't Latins, that weren't doing those types of things, but they still went to a lot of Latin parties and different things, and decided they didn't want to live that way. But it gave them all a travel bug, and they all loved to travel. While they were there, Earl had a man and his wife who were from Haiti, who were black. They had lived in New York. Just absolutely delightful people. And they had a darling little daughter. And our children babysat that little girl, and we had them to our house, and we went to their house. And our children became colorblind because of their South American friends and this wonderful family from Haiti that we all just learned to love. And then we had a friend from, she was LDS, and her husband had been on a mission to Finland, and she was from Finland. And then she went on a mission after his mission, and then they got married later. But we had a great experience there, understanding other peoples and other cultures and other ways of looking at things. And that was one of the greatest blessings, as far as our children weren't here during the years that some of their peers were deciding to smoke or to drink or in junior high and first in high school. And so we feel like they were raised during the years where they may have adopted some of the things that were going around among their peers.
Mm-hmm.
They were away from that, and so when we came back, they found that they had very strong gospel standards and a very desire to live the gospel.
Yeah.
So I think that's those two blessings, and of course, most of all was having the gospel in our lives.
That's great.